My husband was sitting at the computer with his headphones on while his mother was hitting me with a rolling pin, shouting, "That'll teach you not to take out the trash!" I waited until she got tired, then calmly walked toward the outlet. When my mother-in-law realized what I was about to do, she screamed in panic, "No, not that!" Before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The screen glowed softly in the dim living room, casting a pale blue light across my husband's face. He sat hunched over the keyboard, headphones clamped tight, fingers dancing in furious rhythm. Whatever game he was lost in had swallowed him whole. He didn't even flinch when the first thud echoed from the kitchen. I was wiping down the counter when the rolling pin cracked against my shoulder. The impact sent a jolt through my arm, sharp and hot. I stumbled back, catching myself on the fridge door. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, stood over me, face twisted in rage, the wooden pin raised like a club. "That'll teach you not to take out the trash!" she shrieked, swinging again. The second blow grazed my ribs. I raised my arms to shield myself, but she was relentless, fueled by weeks of simmering resentment. It had started small, a forgotten chore, a misplaced mug, a sigh too loud. Evelyn had moved in 6 months ago after her husband passed, and what began as gratitude for her help with the baby had curdled into something darker. She policed every corner of the house, her voice sharp as glass. My husband, Mark, retreated further into his screens each day, leaving me to navigate the minefield alone. Now, as the pin came down a third time, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not anger, just a cold, crystalline clarity. I waited. She swung until her arms trembled, until her breath came in ragged gasps. The pin clattered to the floor. She leaned against the counter, chest heaving, eyes wild with triumph. That's when I moved. I stepped over the scattered flour and broken eggs, past the overturned stool, and walked toward the living room. Mark still hadn't noticed. His world was pixels and sound effects, a fortress of denial. Evelyn's voice cracked behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the wall outlet near the couch. The thick black power cord snaked from it to the back of Mark's computer tower, pulsing with the lifeblood of his escape. I knelt, fingers brushing the plug. Evelyn's footsteps scrambled after me. "No," she whispered, then louder. "No, not that." Mark's head finally turned. The headphones slipped. His eyes widened as he saw me, really saw me, for the first time in weeks. Bruises blooming on my arms, flour in my hair, the rolling pin on the floor behind his mother, who now looked small and frantic. "Sarah?" His voice was small, confused. "What's going on?" I met his gaze. "I'm done." Evelyn lunged, but I was faster. My fingers closed around the plug. One tug. That's all it would take. The screen would go black. The game would die. The illusion would shatter. She grabbed my wrist, nails digging in. "You can't. He needs this. After everything I've done for you." I twisted free. "Everything?" My voice was steady, almost gentle. "You moved into my home. You took my kitchen, my child's bedtime, my husband's attention. And now you hit me with a rolling pin because I forgot the trash?" Mark stood, chair rolling back. "Mom, did you hit her?" Evelyn's mouth opened, closed. No words came. I looked at the plug in my hand. One pull, and the tower would power down. But it wouldn't fix the bruises. It wouldn't undo the months of erosion. It wouldn't make Mark see what he'd become. So I did something else. I unplugged it. The screen flickered, then went dark. Mark made a strangled sound, half protest, half sob. Evelyn froze, her hand still outstretched, Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. I stood, the cord dangling from my fingers. This ends now. Mark stared at the blank monitor like it was a grave. Sarah, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. I turned to Evelyn. Pack your bags. You're leaving tonight. She opened her mouth to argue, but something in my face stopped her. For the first time, she saw me. Not the quiet daughter-in-law who smiled through gritted teeth, but the woman who had just drawn a line in blood and flour. Mark took a step toward me. I'll call the police. On her. On myself if I have to. This isn't right. Evelyn's bravado cracked. You can't throw me out. I have nowhere. You should have thought of that before you raised a hand to me. I pointed to the door. Go. She looked at Mark, pleading. He wouldn't meet her eyes. The next hour was a blur. Evelyn packed in silence, her movements jerky, defeated. Mark called a rideshare, his voice shaking as he gave the address to a cheap motel across town. When the car pulled up, she paused at the door, clutching a single suitcase. I was trying to help, she muttered. You were trying to control, I said. There's a difference. The door closed behind her. The house felt suddenly huge, echoing. Mark sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I let this happen. I let her. I let you. I sat beside him, not touching. You did, but you can choose not to anymore. He looked up, eyes red. How do I fix this? You start by seeing me, really seeing me, every day. And you start by getting help, for the gaming, for the avoidance, for whatever made you think disappearing was okay. He nodded, slow and broken. I will. I swear. I believed him. Not because it was easy, but because the alternative was losing everything. But that single tug on the cord was only the first spark in a fire that would burn for years, reshaping everything we thought we knew about family, love, and survival. The first night without Evelyn was a vacuum. Lily, our 2-year-old, padded barefoot to the guest room at 2:17 a.m., dragging her blanket like a cape. She pressed her ear to the door, whispering, Gamma? Gamma? Story? The silence that answered her felt like a betrayal. Mark scooped her up, her small body rigid with confusion, her curls damp with sleep sweat. He carried her back to our bed, where she wedged between us like a warm, restless comma. None of us slept. I lay staring at the ceiling fan, its lazy circles mirroring the thoughts looping in my head. The bruises throbbed in rhythm with my pulse. I catalogued them like evidence. A crescent on my left bicep where the pin had bitten deepest. A dull ache along my right ribs where the second swing had landed. A tender spot on my shoulder blade where the third had glanced off bone. Each mark was a timestamp of how long I'd let things fester, how many nights I'd swallowed the words, I'm drowning, while Mark's screen glowed in the next room. Mark's breathing was shallow, uneven. Sarah, he whispered into the dark, voice cracking like thin ice. I keep seeing it. The way she swung. The way you didn't scream. Why didn't you scream? Because screaming would have given her the reaction she wanted, I said, my voice flat, practiced. And because I needed you to hear the silence you'd been living in for months. He turned toward me, face half lit by the street lamp bleeding through the curtains. His eyes were glassy, searching. I heard it now. God, I heard it. Morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of rain that soaks through coats and moods alike. Mark was already up, standing at the kitchen window with a mug gone cold in his hand. The rolling pin lay on the counter like a crime scene prop, flour still clinging to its curves. He stared at it as if it might speak, confess, apologize. I'm taking the day off, he said when I walked in, cradling Lily on my hip. She was sucking her thumb, eyes wide and watchful. We need to talk to someone, a professional, today. I poured coffee, hands steady despite the tremor in my chest. I already made an appointment. Crisis counselor, 10 o'clock, downtown. He blinked, surprised, then nodded slowly. You did? I've been planning this exit for weeks, I admitted, setting Lily in her high chair with a sliced banana. Tonight was just the ignition. The fuse was lit long ago. The counselor's office smelled of lavender and old paper, the walls lined with framed degrees and faded posters about healthy boundaries. We sat on a sagging couch, knees almost touching, the air between us thick with unsaid things. Mark spoke first, voice cracking as he described the nights he'd spent raiding virtual cities while his mother raided our marriage. How he'd muted the baby monitor to hear boss mechanics, how he'd told himself just one more hour until the hours became days. I spoke second, detailing the slow erosion, how Evelyn's helpful suggestions had become commands, how her praise for Mark's gaming skills, my boy's a natural strategist, had become ammunition against my exhaustion, how she'd taken over Lily's bedtime stories with moralistic tales that always ended with the wife learning to manage the home better. When I described the rolling pin, the weight of it, the whistle through the air, the way my body had curled instinctively, the counselor's pen paused mid-note. Mark's hand found mine, squeezing hard enough to ache, his knuckles white. Physical violence is a hard boundary, the counselor said gently, her voice a calm anchor. But so is emotional abandonment. You're both standing at a crossroads. The question is, which way do you walk? We left with homework, a safety plan typed on pale blue paper, a list of therapists specializing in addiction and family trauma, and a promise to return together in 3 days. In the parking lot, Mark leaned against the car, rain misting his hair. I feel like I'm waking up from a coma, he said. Everything hurts. Good, I replied, buckling Lily into her car seat. Pain means you're alive. That afternoon, Mark carried the computer tower to the garage like a pallbearer. He didn't just unplug it, he unboxed it entirely. Cables coiled like intestines, fans dusted with the ghosts of late-night marathons. He set it on a workbench beside his old toolbox, a silent funeral for the machine that had devoured him. The monitor followed, then the keyboard, the glowing mouse that had once pulsed like a heartbeat. Lily watched from the doorway, clutching her stuffed bunny, its ear floppy from too many washes. Daddy's toy broke? Daddy's fixing something bigger, he told her, kneeling to her level. His voice was raw, but his eyes were clear. Want to help? She nodded solemnly. He handed her a screwdriver too big for her hands. She banged it against the metal case, giggling at the clang, the sound echoing like a bell in a cathedral. I leaned against the doorframe, throat tight, tears I hadn't allowed myself prickling at the corners of my eyes. We ordered pizza for dinner, our first junk food indulgence in months, the box greasy and fragrant. Mark paid the delivery guy with cash from his wallet, a small act of presence that felt monumental. We ate on the living room floor, Lily between us, sauce on her cheeks like war paint. Mark told her a story about a brave knight who learned to put down his sword and pick up his family, his voice weaving through the pepperoni-scented air. She fell asleep mid-sentence, bunny tucked under her chin, her breathing soft and even. Later, Mark and I sat on the porch steps, watching rain drip from the gutters in silver threads. He spoke first, his voice low. I talked to HR today. They have an employee assistance program, 6 free therapy sessions. I booked all of them, starting tomorrow. Good, I said, pulling my sweater tighter. And the gaming? I deleted the accounts. His voice was raw, like he'd swallowed gravel. Every guild, every character, 4,000 hours gone. It felt like amputating a limb. My hands are still shaking. But the limb was strangling you, I reminded him, my tone gentle but firm. Strangling us. He nodded, eyes on the wet street, street lights reflecting in puddles like fallen stars. I keep thinking about the night Lily was born. You were in labor for 22 hours. I held your hand the whole time, counted your contractions, whispered stupid jokes to make you laugh between pushes. Where did that guy go? He's still in there, I said, reaching for his hand. His fingers were cold, trembling. But he's buried under levels and loot boxes and a mother who taught him that love meant never saying no. We just have to dig, one shovel at a time. The digging was messy, jagged, full of false starts. On day 10, I came home from the bookstore, my first shift back, 3 hours of shelving paperbacks and recommending mysteries, to find Mark in the garage, tower reassembled, screen flickering with the login page of his old game. He looked up guiltily, headset half on, the blue glow painting his face in haunted shadows. Just checking something, he mumbled, fingers hovering over the keyboard like a junkie over a needle. The guild was worried. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I unplugged the monitor with a soft click, coiled the cord like a snake, and set it on the highest shelf, out of reach. Then I handed him the puppy's leash, our new rescue, a scruffy mutt named Pickles. Walk with me. We walked 3 miles in silence, Pickles tugging at the leash, Mark's shoulders hunched against the wind. The sky was the color of bruised peaches. Halfway home, past the park where kids screamed on swings, he spoke, voice barely audible over the crunch of gravel. I hate myself right now. I hate that I almost logged in. I hate that I wanted to. Good, I said, stopping to let Pickles sniff a dandelion. Hate is fuel. Use it. Burn it. Build something with the ashes. He did. The next day, he joined an online support group for gaming addiction. Ironic, but moderated, with daily check-ins and accountability buddies. He posted his relapse publicly, fingers shaking as he typed, Day 10. Almost caved. Wife unplugged me again. Grateful and ashamed. Strangers sent encouragement. Emojis, voice notes. One guy shared a photo of his own smashed console, glass glittering like confetti. Mark printed it and taped it inside the garage cabinet, right above the reassembled tower like a warning label. Evelyn's absence left craters, gaping, jagged holes where routine used to live. The laundry piled up without her obsessive folding, socks mated like soldiers. The fridge stayed half empty without her grocery lectures about proper meal planning. The dishwasher ran half full because no one remembered to start it. I found myself missing the structure, then hating myself for it, for the way my brain had adapted to her tyranny, like a plant bending toward a cracked window. Mark noticed. One night, as I stared at a mountain of tiny onesies, he said, We're not replacing her. We're replacing the dysfunction with teamwork. We made a chore chart, color-coded, laminated at the copy shop, ridiculous in its optimism. Lily got stickers for picking up toys, stars for blocks, hearts for books. Mark got gold stars for cooking dinner, smiley faces for taking out the trash without being asked. I got coffee dates with friends I'd ghosted for months, real friends, the kind who remembered my favorite wine and didn't flinch when I cried into my latte. Therapy unearthed landmines. Mark's childhood, a father who praised report cards but missed recitals, who died suddenly when Mark was 15, leaving a void Evelyn filled with control. A mother who compensated for grief with rules, curfews, chore charts, praise doled out like rationed candy. My own, parents who fought with silence, who taught me that enduring was love, that a good wife absorbed the blows and kept the peace. We drew family trees on butcher paper during a couples session, marking patterns in red ink, control, avoidance, enabling, repeat. One session, the therapist asked Mark to role-play apologizing to his 15-year-old self, the boy who'd hidden in video games after his dad's funeral. He cried so hard he shook, shoulders heaving, tears soaking the collar of his shirt. I held the box of tissues and didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't rescue. This was his excavation. Evelyn sent a package on day 23, a crocheted blanket for Lily, pastel blues and pinks, a note in shaky handwriting. I'm learning boundaries in group therapy. I miss my granddaughter. I'm sorry. Mark read it aloud at the kitchen table, voice flat, then folded it into a drawer. We donated the blanket to a women's shelter downtown, the one with the mural of phoenixes on the wall. Summer arrived sticky and loud, cicadas screaming in the trees like a chorus of tiny chainsaws. We enrolled Lily in toddler swim lessons at the community pool, the one with the cracked tile and the lifeguard who blasted pop music. Mark became the dad who cannonballed into the deep end, earning shrieks of delight from Lily and side-eye from the instructor. I took photos, his hair plastered to his forehead, Lily's arms around his neck like a koala, water beating on their lashes. Proof. Tangible, undeniable proof that we were here, present, alive. He started running. First a mile, gasping and red-faced, then 3, then a 5K for charity, some fund for kids with heart defects. He crossed the finish line sweaty and triumphant, metal clinking against his chest. The medals hung on the fridge next to Lily's finger paintings, a gallery of small victories. He cooked, really cooked, curries that made the house smell like a spice market, sourdough that rose overnight while we slept tangled together, the yeast bubbling like a promise. Sex returned slowly, tentatively, not the frantic pre-baby collisions, but something deeper, more deliberate. Eye contact that lingered. Laughter when Lily's monitor crackled mid-kiss, her sleepy voice calling for water. Mark tracing the faded bruise on my shoulder like it was a map to redemption, his fingers gentle, reverent. I'm sorry, he whispered one night, lips against the scar. I'm so sorry. I kissed him to silence the apology, because some things are forgiven in the doing, not the saying. Fall brought a letter from Evelyn's senior living facility, postmarked from a town 2 hours away. She'd completed a family reconciliation program, 12 weeks, group therapy, role-playing apologies. Enclosed was a certificate on thick cardstock and a request for a supervised visit. When you're ready. Mark stared at it for days, turning it over in his hands like a foreign artifact. I'm not ready, he said finally, voice steady. But I will be. Someday. When it's about healing, not guilt. We framed Lily's first daycare artwork instead. A scribble of orange and purple, a sun with stick figure rays. Family, she declared, pointing at the blobs. We hung it above the couch where the computer used to throne, a new altar. Winter came early, snow dusting the driveway the morning Mark hit 6 months game-free. He built a lopsided snowman with Lily, carrot nose crooked, scarf stolen from my drawer, coal eyes scavenged from the grill. I watched from the window, coffee steaming in my hands, breath fogging the glass. He looked up, caught my eye, and waved with a mitten-clad hand, his smile brighter than the snow. That night, we danced in the kitchen to an old playlist, our wedding song, a cheesy 90s ballad we'd sworn we'd never admit to loving. Lily on Mark's hip, me pressed against his back, swaying off-beat. The oven timer dinged. Cookies, chocolate chip, slightly burnt on the edges. Perfect. We ate them hot, chocolate smearing Lily's cheeks, Mark licking it off her nose with exaggerated slurps. Spring again. 2 years since the rolling pin. The bookstore promoted me to events coordinator, my first real career step since Lily was born. I organized a local authors fair in the park. Mark built the booths from scratch, muscles earned from weekend projects and morning runs, not pixel grinding. Lily helped by handing him nails with sticky fingers, her tongue poking out in concentration. Evelyn's second letter arrived on a Tuesday, shorter, typed this time. I respect your timeline. I'm proud of the man my son is becoming. I volunteer at the food bank now. I'm learning to give without taking. Mark read it at the kitchen table, then folded it into his wallet, next to a photo of Lily grinning toothlessly. Maybe coffee, he said, voice thoughtful. In a public place, with a therapist, when the time feels right. I nodded. When you're ready, not before. We planted a garden in the backyard, raised beds Mark built from reclaimed wood, soil rich and dark. Tomatoes, basil, sunflowers that grew taller than Lily, their faces tracking the sun like worshippers. Mark watered them every morning, humming off-key, the hose spraying arcs of rainbows in the dawn light. The soil under his nails became a badge, a reminder that growth takes dirt and time. One evening, Mark came home with a small box from the hardware store. Inside, a new outlet cover, brass, engraved with our initials, and the date I unplugged him. S&M 11-13-23. He installed it in the living room wall, right where the cord used to snake, his drill whirring softly. For the day we choose what gets power, he said, stepping back to admire it. The brass caught the lamplight, warm and steady. I kissed him there, against the freshly painted wall, Lily's laughter echoing from the backyard swing, where she pumped her legs higher, higher, higher. The coffee meeting happened 6 months later, on a crisp October morning. A neutral cafe with mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt espresso. Therapist present, notebook open. Evelyn looked smaller, hair grayer, hands folded tightly around a mug of chamomile. She apologized, directly, without excuses, eyes on the table. I was grieving. I was scared. I took it out on the wrong person. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry, Mark. Mark listened, face unreadable, fingers drumming a silent rhythm on his knee. Lily, now 5, sat between us, coloring a placemat with crayons the cafe provided. When Evelyn reached for her hand, Lily offered a blue crayon instead. Blue is for sky, she said matter-of-factly. Gamma can have sky. Evelyn cried, silent tears tracking down cheeks lined with age. Mark didn't, but he didn't leave either. He ordered her a scone, plain, no butter, the way she used to like. A small gesture, a beginning. We turned the guest room into an art studio, walls primed white, easels from the thrift store, jars of paint in every color. Lily painted murals directly on the plaster, dragons with glitter scales, spaceships trailing stardust, a family of stick figures holding hands under a sun made of gold glitter and hope. Mark coached her soccer team on Saturdays, whistle around his neck, clipboard in hand, shouting encouragement in a voice that carried across the field. I ran the book club at the store, hosting authors under string lights, pouring wine into plastic cups, debating plot twists until midnight. The rolling pin became a planter on the porch, drilled with drainage holes, filled with basil that grew lush and fragrant. Every time I brushed past, the leaves released their scent, sharp, green, alive. A reminder that even weapons can become something that nourishes, that redemption is possible in the unlikeliest places. We took a road trip that summer, 10 days, no itinerary, just a minivan packed with snacks and a playlist Lily curated, mostly Disney, and one inexplicable sea shanty. We slept in quirky motels, ate diner pie at 2 a.m., watched fireworks from a cornfield in Iowa. Mark drove most of the way, one hand on the wheel, the other on my knee. At a rest stop in Nebraska, He bought me a keychain shaped like a tiny rolling pin. "For the story," he said, grinning. I laughed so hard I cried. Evelyn joined us for one afternoon in Colorado, neutral ground, a picnic by a lake. She brought sandwiches and a board game. Lily beat her at checkers. Mark took a photo. 3 generations, sun-dappled, smiling. He printed it, framed it, hung it in the hallway. Progress, not perfection. On the 10th anniversary of the unplugging, we threw a party. Not for the violence, but for the victory. The backyard overflowed with friends, some who'd known us before, when Mark's eyes were bloodshot, and I smiled like a ghost. Some who'd only met the after, the version of us that laughed loud and hugged hard. Mark grilled burgers, smoke curling into the dusk. Lily, now 12, DJ'd from her phone, curating a playlist that spanned decades. I watched them from the porch, basil planter at my feet, fireflies blinking like tiny lanterns. Mark caught my eye across the crowd and mouthed, "I see you." Then louder, to the group, "To the day the power went out, and we finally turned the lights back on." Glasses clinked. Lily rolled her eyes but grinned. Someone started a conga line. I joined, barefoot in the grass, the earth cool under my soles. I wrote a book, not about the rolling pin, though it's in there, a chapter titled "The Click Heard Round the House," mostly about the after, the relapses, the chore charts, the burnt cookies, the snowman with the crooked nose, the garden that fed us through a summer of grief when Mark's uncle passed. I titled it Unplugged, a love story in 3 chords. It hit the local bestseller list. Mark built the bookshelf that held the first signed copy. Evelyn came to the launch, sitting in the back row, pride shining in eyes that had once held only judgment. She bought 10 copies, one for every member of her therapy group. "For inspiration," she said. We renewed our vows on the porch where the basil still grew, 20 years to the day after the unplugging. Lily, now 22, officiated. Ordained online for $20 and a dream. She wore a dress the color of sunflowers. Mark wore the same suit from our wedding, tailored to fit the man he'd become. I wore white, not because I was pure, but because I'd earned the right to start again. Pickles, gray-muzzled and arthritic, sat at our feet. Evelyn stood in the front row, holding a tissue, smiling through tears. When Lily asked for the rings, Mark pulled them from his pocket. Simple bands, engraved inside with the date of the unplugging and the words, "Choose daily." "I choose you," he said, voice steady. "Every day, even the hard ones." "I choose you," I echoed, "even when you forget the trash." Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Lily pronounced us still married, still awesome. We kissed under string lights, the basil scent rising around us like a blessing. People ask how we survived. I tell them about the rolling pin, the plug, the silence that roared. Mark adds the support group, the burnt cookies, the snowman with the crooked nose, the road trip where we sang off-key for 2,000 miles. But the real story is quieter, woven into the fabric of ordinary days. The morning he made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, steam curling from their spines. The night Lily had a fever, and we took turns rocking her till dawn, her small body burning against our chests. The way he learned my coffee order by heart, light cream, 2 sugars, no lid, and brought it to me in bed on Sundays. The day he looked at me across a crowded bookstore during my reading and mouthed, "I see you," while the audience clapped for a line about redemption. The evening we danced in the kitchen to that same cheesy ballad, Lily home from college, rolling her eyes but joining in, her barefoot twirl a perfect echo of her toddler wobble. It's every day after the click, when we chose, deliberately, fiercely, stubbornly, to keep the lights on together, to see each other, flaws and fears and faded bruises and all. The outlet in the living room stayed empty, the brass cover gleaming. We didn't need it anymore. The power was in us now, steady, chosen, alive, generated not by a cord, but by the daily act of plugging into each other. Some stories end when the villain leaves. Ours began then, and it keeps beginning. One unplugged morning, one chosen glance, one shared laugh at a time. The basil still grows, the light still burns, and we, Mark, Sarah, Lily, even Evelyn in her quiet way, keep tending the garden we built from the ashes of a single world-shattering tug.